This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. With Stuart Cameron and Dale Clancy.
Hello and welcome to the 9th edition of the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast, and at this stage Garnock from National League 4 still have their 100% record, including try bonus points with another victory at the weekend, making it 6 out of 6 for them. Well, joining me as always is Dale Clancy, and Storm Babet scuppered 8 of the 24 scheduled games at the weekend, but we were lucky to get 2/3 of the games played, including all of the Premiership matches. So let's start as always with the Premiership and the results from Saturday, starting with Curry 48, Kelso 13, and Curry back to winning ways after a couple of losses on the road, and Kelso finding it again a bit difficult to live with the top three.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a game that Kelso could potentially go up and cause Curry some problems, but especially with looking at the Curry team, there was a few players in that squad that didn't have a lot of appearances in the first team, but Curry able to pull away in the second half and get back to winning ways, which in the context of the way the weekend went was really essential that they picked up that victory, and they did just that.
And the fact that Kelso have now played the big three all away from home, they can relax a wee bit because at least they're going to get them at home again.
Yeah, I wouldn't relax too much because it'll be difficult to play those teams. The big threes, we're kind of calling them. When they go down to Poynder Park, but they could potentially have a big say in those final positions in the table. We've alluded to it before in terms of those games between those three teams are going to be pivotal in terms of who gets the home semi-finals, but that's not discounting all the other squads and the other teams in the division that will certainly want to pick up points on their way and get some good position in the table as well. I think they're doing very well for a team coming up to National 1. The opening few weeks, the results were really positive, but there's always going to be bumps in the road. There's always going to be these difficult games. They're going to lose some narrow games. They're going to be on the end of heavy defeats, but to go to Millennium and compete for the majority of the game and perhaps just run out of legs was it does show that there's been a lot of progress over the summer from jumping up from National 1 to the Premiership for Kelso.
Hawick 45, Heriots Blues 33, high scoring game. Hawick fielding a stronger side this week, but Heriots Blues scoring over 30 points at Mansfield Park. And do you know the last time Hawick conceded over 30 at Mansfield Park? Long time ago. It was actually the 5th of October 2019, which we traced it back to when Marr won 43-15 at Mansfield Park. And then, of course, a couple of weeks later, they lost the game against Glasgow Hawks, which was the last time that they tasted defeat in that league.
Yeah, in terms of their home forms being brilliant, and I think we go back to last week when we were talking about the likes of Musselburgh and Heriots. They've both visited Mansfield Park and been able to put in some good performances, and it does indicate that competition for that top 4 position is going to be really tightly contested between those sides, including Edinburgh Accies. But again, Hawick just have a little bit too much firepower. I think they've added perhaps a little bit more to their game this year. They were really, really strong up front last year, on the bench as well, which they still are. But I just feel that they're scoring a lot of tries now as well. So, they're on that upward curve. They've pretty much had their cage rattled by Marr with that defeat on the road, and then they've backed it up with a good win at home against Curry. And then they're starting to get past these tricky ties as well against teams in form. Heriots and Musselburgh are both teams in form. So, this weekend's fixture for them is a completely different kettle of fish. But certainly, Hawick again being able to put in a really good performance, and Heriots racking up tries.
Jedforest 31, Marr 41. Now Jed won the try count there 5-4, which they'll be absolutely delighted about. Third time this season they've scored 30 points though, and still not being on the winning side. And 5 points for Marr at the end of the day continues their stint at the top. Yeah,
it was a really positive performance from Jedforest. Obviously Marr got off to a great start in that game, taking the lead earlier on, but Jed never let them out their sights, which I think, we talk about home form and we hammer it on all the time in terms of making your home form count and getting something, and I think that try bonus is a big result back for Jedforest. Yes, they won the try count. They can show that they can score tries against these teams, but it's just the defence side of things as well. So they weren't able to let Marr out of their sights. They kept it nip and tuck for the whole game, but again, just coming up short. But I think their squad, looking at the likes of both Youngs being on the field at the same time, there's still a few reshuffles in there, but on paper, just looked a little bit more consistent, a little bit more steady than the ones that we've seen in the last few weeks. So hopefully this is the start of something more positive at Riverside, and they can start to kind of claw their way back up and make it a little bit more of a competition at the bottom of the table.
There were certainly smiles on the faces, and rightly so as well. They're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you've got to see progress, because you don't want to go through a season where you don't make any strides. But that's that was top versus bottom. It was billed as a big game. I know you were speaking to Diffenthal before the start of the game, explaining about how difficult these games are. and they were expected to come down and put 50, 60 points on Jed, similar to what Hawick done, but they've not. So that shows great progress. Difficult to look into results, but, there are two sides. Jed have had a really checkered history against Marr in the last few years, but out of the rugby side of things, positive. Obviously, suffering from discipline issues as well, losing personnel for periods of the game, but to be able to score 31 points against the league leaders who have been in good form is a good return.
Well, we were absolutely amazed last week, weren't we, when we saw GHK against Watsonians 40-40. 1 week later, we have an 84-point draw. Musselburgh 42, Glasgow Hawks 42. Musselburgh on the comeback trail there after trailing to Hawks. 3 points each, a fair result.
Yeah, and I think it's, Musselburgh they're probably kicking themselves actually in terms that they weren't able to see that game through, because they've got themselves in a really good position in the league. Glasgow Hawks know they're chasing the other teams, because I think it's still open for that fourth place position. Perhaps down to Hawks if they can get a bit more consistency, but it's almost a basketball score there. It's similar to the Hawick result as well, but I think Musselburgh out the two sides will be a bit disappointed that they couldn't make home advantage count there. But again, a nice, entertaining, high-scoring game. Those draws have all happened at the bottom half of the table, so those results could come back to be really crucial at the end of the year. So, when we're sitting here in a few weeks' time looking at the league tables, it'll be interesting to see where the lie of the land is, and if one of those teams perhaps have missed an opportunity getting into the top four, or just staved off relegation. It's going to be interesting, but it just does signal towards the fact that this Premiership now is, it's really competitive. It's been well mapped out in terms of the changes that it's went through over the last few years. So it's good to see that the teams are that competitive and that close. Selkirk
25, Edinburgh Accies 32 in the other game. Selkirk come back after being 20-0 down, and they picked up 2 valuable points, but it was another home loss. And Accies, of course, must have felt a little bit of a déjà vu, because 7 days earlier they were in a similar lead against Kelso, and then Kelso came back and won. But Selkirk ran out of time really at the end to get anything more than the 2 points.
Yeah, a little bit of the feedback I've had from the Selkirk side of things was there was a few opportunities at key moments in the game. One early on, one a crucial part during the middle of the game where they've scuppered 2-on-1 opportunities, or try scoring opportunities certainly. And you think you score at least one of them, you get yourself back into a better position, especially the one at the start. It does change the rhetoric of the game and the way it's going to play, but again, Selkirk are on the wrong side of the result. But Edinburgh Accies, we've spoke about it. I still fancy them for the top 4, and they needed to win that game. We said how important it was last week, so they've been able to get that one over the line.
Well, those same two clubs, Heriots and Musselburgh, did it again with the try bonuses. That means 7 apiece for them, which is very, very impressive in the Premiership. But here's the question for you. Which one team stopped them both from getting a try bonus?
One team that stopped them from getting a try bonus, I'm going to say Curry.
It is indeed Curry. It was Musselburgh 7, Curry 46 at Stony Hill. And then at Poynder Park, Curry 46 again, Heriots 5.
I just remember the Curry Heriots result was, it was one of those games where Heriots actually had good form and then went to Millennium and were on the wrong end of a result, and they didn't get I just remember they didn't get a good points tally that day. So it kind of swayed my decision there, but that's 2 for 2 over the last 2 weeks. You've asked me off the bat 2 questions and I've got them both right.
And that was a lot easier, I think, because of that Curry result. Anyway, let's have a look at the league table then. Marr at the top, played 8, 35 points for them. Second, Hawick 32. Curry in third place with that game in hand. They're on 27. Heriots Blues in fourth place, 26. Edinburgh Accies climb back into the top half. They're fifth with 24, just ahead of Musselburgh, who dropped a couple of points or gained 3, whichever way you want to look at it. Musselburgh have 24 points, but on points difference are behind Edinburgh Accies. In seventh, it's Glasgow Hawks. They're on 16. Kelso in 8th on 16, Selkirk in 9th on 13, and Jedforest, they get that 1 point, but they're now 10 points behind Selkirk. They've got 3 points at the bottom of the table. Now, Curry have that game in hand, as we mentioned. Heriots Blues dropped points at Hawick, and they have a -3 points difference, which is unusual for a team in fourth place.
Yeah, but they've been able to score tries, but you think about the game there, they're 12 points behind Hawick. They were a significant amount behind Curry. That does come back to bite you and come back to haunt you. So we talk about the race for that fourth place, like the rest of the little micro leagues now. But you look at those teams, Hawks, Musselburgh, Accies, and Heriots. There is a race for that fourth place. So it's going to be interesting to see what the points tally is going to mean at the end of the season, because it's obviously going against Heriots just now. The other teams are in reasonable shape, perhaps apart from Musselburgh, but the rest of them are all in good condition on that front.
This week we'll hopefully have another full programme in the Premiership. Edinburgh Accies against Curry at Rayburn Place, a chance for Accies to go ahead of Curry and make a play for that playoff place, as you say.
Yeah, it's another big one. I think, again, Edinburgh Accies have been really inconsistent, so your kind of neck starts to kind of look towards Curry at this stage, because they've been able to put in some good performances. Even just the narrow defeat against Marr, they're competing against the top teams, and Edinburgh Accies haven't been able to hit their straps. So, it's a big game for Edinburgh Accies if they want to try and squeeze into that position, because you can even look at it, can they pull Curry back down the way towards that fourth place and make that area quite congested? If Curry win, the three teams are almost cut adrift and they can start pushing on towards the having that little micro league at the top. But you would never bat against Edinburgh Accies at home at Rayburn Place. Against Edinburgh teams, it's really difficult to call. Being in the Borders, we've covered Borders derbies for years, and they're sometimes drab and boring affairs, and they're difficult to really predict. I do think the same about Edinburgh derbies as well. We've seen them go against form. Edinburgh Accies last season were riding high, and Heriots were able to turn them over. I think it was at Rayburn Place, might be in a Golden Acre, but there was one of the results that just completely bucked the trend of.
Yeah, that was Heriots winning at Rayburn Place.
Yeah, Rayburn Place. Yeah. So there's nothing to say that against. I know Edinburgh Accies are at home, but they do start this as second favourites. So Curry will be hoping to just keep touch with the teams at the top.
Glasgow Hawks versus Heriots Blues. Let's hear from Hawks head coach Andy Hill. See what he has to say this week following their high-scoring draw at Musselburgh.
The game against Musselburgh was a really strange one at the weekend. We got off to obviously a horrific start, conceding a try probably in the first 30 seconds, but scored a couple of great tries after that, and going into half-time we just got ourselves in the lead, and then after half-time we scored a couple of great tries, and you're thinking that we're going to kick on from there and put a big score on Musselburgh, but all credit to them. They dug in. A couple of their key men made some, real telling plays whereby they got themselves back into the game and got themselves in front. And it was a real credit to our boys, whereby they got themselves in a position to win the game at the end when they scored the try, and we unfortunately missed the kick. It's one of those ones after full time that you didn't really know how to feel. You were proud of the boys that they managed to get themselves back in and put themselves in a position to win the game and come away with 3 points. But at the same time, you're disappointed at the fact that you've kind of let go a 17-point lead at the same time. So that was a hard one to swallow. But in reflection, big part we need to work on is our defence. It's a part that, we're conceding tries that we probably shouldn't. It's a part that we, historically we've always been classed as one of the most physical teams in the league, and I think we've yet to find that form. It's something we need to get back to. It's something that we've spoken about this week. Whereas the attack part of the game, we scored, I think, 3 first phase tries on Saturday. The backs were pretty sublime at times. And our phase play, just after half time for about 15-20 minutes, Musselburgh couldn't live with us. So it's about trying to sustain that over the 80 minutes. And this weekend will be a real test to go away and do that, because Heriots are very similar to us. They like to throw the ball about. They play a great brand of rugby. Phil's got them playing some really entertaining stuff, so hopefully it's a good game for the neutral to come down and watch. And it'll come down to the fine margins again that we probably fell of at the weekend. We need to try and get a win to push ourselves up the table and into a position that we feel we deserve to be in. But these things don't happen without changes that happen through the midweek, and a big part of that's going to have to be working on our defence, working on our physicality, to kind of take that and try and nullify the threat in Heriots' defence.
Andy Hill. Well, Hawks hard to beat at Ballgrey.
Yes, and I think this is going to be a real test as well, because we've spoke the last few weeks about the team for Hawks, and it's kind of been reshaped, and really interesting to hear last week in terms of the dynamics of that club and how they look at some of the Borders teams and the club teams that are in a community. They've got a conveyor belt of talent where Hawks have to press the reset button pretty much every year. So, they've obviously gone through another tough transition, but again, still in with the fight and in with a shout to nip into that top 4 place. So, one of their rivals, Heriots, have to go to their patch. So it's the same story. You need to try and take as many points as possible from this one and starve your opposition of any points at all. And that's the same for both sides here. Heriots will be looking to try and keep a grasp of that 4th position.
And let's not forget Heriots Blues. This is their 4th of 5 consecutive away games in a row for them, because obviously the Hawick match against Heriots was reversed. The clubs agreed on that one. But the end of the season, obviously, if Heriots can keep up there, they're going to end with 4 home games, which could be crucial.
Yeah, and I think it's the same as about Hawick as well. You know, they end with 3 away games that we know about and we've spoke about at length, but it could be a real advantage for Heriots going into the end of the season, especially, you know, when you get to the turn, and I've been talking about this in most of the leagues, you can start to size up when your big games are now, because the first, especially the 10-team leagues, I think they're brilliant, because you're starting to look at the teams and you're all trying to look at results and see trends and see who's beating who. When you get to the turn, you know what the teams are about, you know what their strengths are, who's playing well, new stars, and Heriots will be able to go and turn round and go, pretty much the majority of our games are going to be at home in the final straight, so providing they can keep a grip of that 4th position, they'll be hard to knock off.
Well, you know, I love my stats, and an interesting sequence so far for Heriots Blues. They've won every other game so far, so it's 1 draw, 1 lost, 1 lost, 1 lost. It's going to be a win, isn't it?
Well, I think the first thing with that is you said it was interesting, and I'm yet to see the interest in that. But no, you know, it's interesting to see these patterns. It does show that little bit of inconsistency, but you look at then the turn of the season, you look at when the next round of fixtures come up, it's the home advantage, and they'll want that consistency in their team and in their results to make sure that they can get over the line. But you just look at their squad at the moment, it does look quite impressive. I think a lot of players with good experience, a lot of young players coming through as well, so things are looking good at Goldenacre, I think. Okay,
you mentioned border derbies. We've got a couple for you this week. Hawick versus Selkirk. Last time these two met at Mansfield Park, it was a 22-22 draw. That was the first day of the season last season, and that result, of course, cost Hawick a place in the Border League final ultimately. Sesh Henderson is Selkirk's head coach now, but first the thoughts of the Greens man in charge, Matty Douglas.
Yeah, look, our attention turns to a border derby this weekend against Selkirk. We know how tough a games we've had in the past against Selkirk. Some really tight games, and probably in the past 3 seasons, you know, probably hasn't been a bigger margin than kind of 5 points, 6 points. You know, a draw last year and a tight win over at Selkirk. So we know what's coming. We know that Selkirk will definitely raise their game for this one. They'll be looking to move up the table, and they've had some good success in border derbies this season, you know, the same as us. So, you know, on paper it looks like an intriguing fixture, and for us it's about continuing to move forward and week on week get better. Look, we're coming off the back of a good win against Heriots last week. If anything, defensively, we probably switched off in certain parts of the game early on and also later on in the game. So, look, we've got probably little things to fix going into it, but we've had a great week's training. There's, you know, a great buzz at the club at the minute. You know, we've won our last 6. Since the Marr game, we've played some good rugby, and look, we're sitting second in the table. You know, we have to be happy at where we are at the minute. Look, our goal is to get top 4, and at the minute we're continuing to win games, and that's the main thing. It builds confidence. Even if you're not playing the greatest at times, we're always looking to get better, and you know, we've got a great group of players that are just driving standards week in, week out. But in terms of you know, this weekend, it will be a battle. You know, I know that Sesh will have a game plan there. He'll have one in place for Selkirk to try and, you know, at the end of the day, cause an upset. The table doesn't lie, we'll go into as favourites, but we'll strive off that. We'll look to continue to play our game and put pressure on where we feel we can get gains. So it's a big game in context for both teams, and for us, we've got another full squad to pick from. We've got a lot of players training at the minute. Another few players are back this week, either from holiday or injury. So it'll be a tough selection again to pick a squad. But you know, for us, we just keep building, and we'll be looking to finish off the first round of fixtures with a win.
We're really excited about Saturday's fixture against Hawick. It's always an extra bite when there's a local derby. It always refocuses the players as well, especially after last weekend against the Accies. We can't give teams 20-0 a start and expect to win games, but you know, second half, we won the second half 25-12, and we were still disappointed at that in terms of couple of tries that we gave them. We could have ended up winning the game, you know, if things were different, but they weren't. But we've got to learn from that. And looking to this week's game, and actually was an extra bite at training last night, a real edge, because the boys are buzzing to get to Mansfield on Saturday and just look, you know what local derby games are like. They're exciting, physical. You know, Hawick are a quality side, and I've been looking at some of the games, and they've got strong runners all over the park, some neat players in the back three. So we need to be our best defensively, but also aware that we've got some real options in attack as well. So we can't go there and be conservative. We've got to go there and give it a go, and and win the gain line in attack and defence, and make sure we cut Hawick space down as much as possible, and when we do get space, use it. And it might not be a lot of occasions, but when we do get it, we need to be clinical and know where to put the ball and use that space that's in front of us, and just really looking forward to this border derby against Hawick. Hope it goes well.
Sesh Henderson, and before that it was Matty Douglas. Now Hawick have destroyed Kelso 61-7. They've destroyed Jedforest 61-0. Are they going to take Selkirk to 61?
I don't think they'll take them to 60, but I think it'll be a comfortable win. I do. I just think that Selkirk haven't been able to really hit that real consistency in any of their squads, any of their form yet. And I think to go against Hawick at home, it's going to be a big ask, because over the last few years Selkirk have been able to frustrate Hawick. I just think they're a little bit different this year. I think that the confidence that they've gained from winning the double last year is really showing. They've been rattled, and then they've reacted really well. And those young players, or those players that perhaps we've not looked at as world beaters because they've not been winning the Premiership and things like that, all of a sudden that dialogue completely changes. And I do think that Hawick will pick up a sizable victory on Saturday.
And then, of course, the other border derby is Kelso versus Jedforest. And after Jed's improved performance last week, they'll certainly be fancying their chances at Poynder Park against their nearest rivals geographically.
This was one of the games, when Kelso got promoted, that I was excited to talk about, be involved in whatever aspect, because I think the event itself is going to be huge, because, as you say, it's their nearest rivals. There's a long history between these two sides, and I think this game will be a lot closer than perhaps what the form early on in the season has predicted, because this is a true border derby. They're not too far away in the league. Yes, points wise they are, and they have had different starts to the league, but you've got National 1 team coming up, a team that's been in the Premiership for a while, close rivals. I just think it's going to be one of those tetchy border derbies. We'll be sitting here in a week's time talking about a 40-all draw, but I just think it's going to be one of those games that that could possibly go either way. Kelso have been solid. They've been pretty good in their start to life in the Premiership, and obviously have a plan to stay there for a long time. Jedforest also want to stay in the Premiership, so this is one of those games that they'll be wanting to try and keep onto the coattails of Kelso.
Well, let's find out the news from both camps. Jed's David Grieve, and first of all, Kelso Director of Rugby, Neil Hinnigan.
We welcome near rivals Jedforest to Poynder Park this Saturday. Both teams obviously badly needing the points at the minute. Jed not had the best starts of the season, but last week they were very unlucky not to get the win against Marr, and a lot of players returning for them, and they're looking more like themselves. So obviously they'll be targeting this game against Kelso to get themselves off the mark, and you can understand why. And it just looks like it could go to the wire, a typical border derby. We're fully aware that this will be a very, very tough match, and one that obviously will look to have a big support there. The lunch is sold out beforehand, and I would think Jed will bring a big support with them as well. So it'll be an intriguing one. We've got a few players returning. Angus Roberts makes a return. Grant Shields, Cammy Brown, Ewan Knox, Murray Woodcock and Terry Logan all return to the park. So that bolsters us a fair bit. So there's a bit more experience in there, and so we'll see how that goes. We'll need to be a bit more physical. From last week we were a bit passive against Curry, and we had some positives in the game. We were in the game for large parts, and we just didn't take chances when we had them, and then some of our defence let ourselves down at key times, and Curry obviously ran away with it. But we were in the game, and it's probably hardened us up for this week. So yeah, there was some positives to take from that. Looking ahead to this week, it's just about getting off to a good start and imposing ourselves on Jed, especially on our home patch at Poynder Park. So yeah, we're looking forward to a big day at Poynder, and this is a fixture that's not taken place since 2019, and we play for the Ballantine Trophy when it's at Poynder, so that adds a bit of extra spice to it when there's a trophy up for grabs. It's a fixture that's been badly missed to the calendar, so it's great to have it back, and the whole club, and I'm sure Jed as well, are looking forward to the match.
So on Saturday, we played Marr down at Jed. And I think I can safely say it was the best performance of the season. We showed some real commitment, we showed some real hunger, and at times we showed some real quality. Maybe one or two decisions went our way, we could have actually won the game. We won the try count 5-4, which, that's a huge positive for us. This weekend we're down at Kelso for a derby game, so we're going to need those same qualities. Positive thing for us is we should have the same squad there or thereabouts, and I think having that consistency will keep us in good stead. And yeah, we're going to go down there with attitude. We've got nothing to lose, so we're going to just go down to Kelso and we're just going to have a go and see what happens.
So a possible banana skin for Kelso against their big rivals, but they are playing at home, which is a huge plus, as we've always mentioned in the podcast.
Yep, Poynder, a really difficult place to go to, and I think it will be equally as hard, if not even more so, this weekend, because, as I say, just the context of that derby, it's a huge thing. I think one thing as well is noting that obviously Paulo Ferreira is retired for Jed, and there was a lot of stuff on the social media about it. He's been a great servant to Jedforest, so
has he actually retired?
He's actually retired for, I believe, the second time, and this is
just the second.
This is supposedly official.
I've done about 5 retirement interviews with Paulo Ferreira.
I've
keeps coming back.
Yeah, the new GoFundMe page has come out as well, so there's another whip round. But in terms, obviously the border slant and things is we've watched Jed for a few years, and he's been a cornerstone of all their good stuff and been there through the last few years. So obviously he's going to be a huge miss for them.
50 odd tries for Jedforest, apparently, according to David Grieve.
Yeah, I know, and I think on social media it said from a tally of about 7.5 metres. So yeah, there's none been running from the 22, but he's, as I say, he was instrumental. He's been a huge contributor for their points and their scrum, and he's been a really good asset for that Jedforest team. So he'll certainly be a miss.
We certainly wish him all the best. Presumably he's retiring due to injury. I'm sure he would still love to be on the park, even though obviously can't at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's. I think off the top of my head, I think it was a hand injury or something that was in there, and obviously he's wanting to try and find that balance with work now as well. So it's unfortunate. I think it's a sign of the times as well. Decades ago, rugby was probably more important than work, but things are a bit tougher now in life, and work takes a bit more precedent, and clubs have to try and support that. So hopefully Jedforest could reap the benefits with him, and maybe the twos, or perhaps in a coaching capacity, because I'm sure he's still got a lot to contribute to that club.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have a camera at that match, so look out for highlights on Borders Rugby TV on Sunday for that one, and it'll be one of our featured games on Rugby Radio, live on air at 2:30 on Saturday. The other game in the Premiership, Marr against Musselburgh, first against 6. Marr getting another 5 points to keep them 6 points clear at the top last week. Here's head coach Kenny Diffenthal.
Last weekend against Jed, what a tough game. Jed obviously are a team that pride themselves on playing a decent brand of rugby, so it put us under so much pressure, and us making a few errors and not actually turning up was quite disappointing. But to be fair to them, they took their chances, which made it very, very tough for us. So all credit must go to them. I'm looking forward to this weekend against Musselburgh. Another tough challenge for us. Musselburgh have been going very well, have been running teams close, if not winning. So we're going to have to be at our best again this weekend. Hopefully I get a reaction that I've asked for from the boys, and hopefully we can actually turn up and start the game really well and push on. So we've worked pretty hard this week on the little bits and pieces that I think were really negative last week. So let's hope and see we can get a really good performance this week. Guys are pretty positive. Training has been a good reaction. So hopefully we carry it forward into the game.
Kenny Diffenthal. And the Bill McLaren Shield, of course, up for grabs for this one. Can Musselburgh give Marr a fright the way they did Hawick a few weeks ago?
Yeah, and if Musselburgh want to take it, I think they're going to have to take the crowbar up, because I think from the photo I've seen from you, it's well wedged onto the wall at Fullerton. But, it's another intriguing game. Marr have been really impressive. Compared to where they were last year, they were very patchy, but found that consistency now. Obviously got one of the Johnson brothers retiring as well in recent weeks, so they're losing players of really valuable experience. But this is a different Musselburgh team than what we've been used to over the last couple of years. They're competitive. They've been able to score tries. They keep games really tight as well. So, in terms of what they've been working on over the summer, it's really bearing fruit now. So, it's going to be a really intriguing game as well between Marr and Musselburgh.
OK, let's go to National 1 then, and the results from last week. 3 matches just. GHA 41, GHK 14. That game certainly went to form, but GHK were 14-12 up at some point.
Yeah, it was, again, just a bit of bragging rights there for GHA, and they're almost hitting a little bit of form now as well, because, they've not found things as easy as perhaps some other people, myself included, maybe thought it was going to be with them dropping into National 1. Obviously find themselves in the top half, but probably not as high as they perhaps like. Not found that consistency, but have been able to deal another big blow to GHK, who have been on the end of a couple of heavy Glasgow defeats, and it's another one from GHA.
And we have the identical scoreline in the other Glasgow match, which was Glasgow Accies 41, Gala 14. Another big win for Accies, who are on a roll at the moment, 4 wins on the trot. The first 3 games saw them get hammered at Ayr, a loss at Watsonians, and a narrow win versus Dundee. So where's this form come from?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I know loads about Glasgow Accies, but I just think it's impressive for a side coming up from National. I think the gulf between National 1 up to the Premiership is pretty big, even in light of what's happened with the change of this kind of structure. But the jump from National 2 up to National 1 is probably a little bit more daunting, because the further down you get down the leagues, the lower the quality is. That's a league pyramid, that's fact. But sometimes, the struggles further down, or in terms of personnel, players, availability, squads out in the pitch, it dilutes the further down you get the pyramid. So, for Glasgow Accies to be able to go up a division and deal a big blow to a team like Gala, who on paper have been a competitive force in National 1 for the last few years, and with a bit of luck might even be in the Premiership, to put on that score is impressive. And against Melrose as well, against GHK, these teams they've been able to really emphatically defeat, and it looks like there's been some sort of gentleman's agreement between clubs beginning with G and National 1 at the weekend past, all 41-14, but another impressive performance from Glasgow Accies, and then back to the drawing board for Gala.
And the other game was Watsonians 48, Biggar 29. Watsonians making sure that they got over the line this week after that 40-40 draw. Still no win for Biggar though, and Watsonians move into the top 5.
As every week passes, it perhaps gets a little bit more worrying for Biggar, because when a game goes, it's your opportunity to pick up points, obviously, and you have less and less opportunity as the season progresses. But I do think there's going to be a turn in form at some point. I'm not familiar with bigger teams going through a whole season and just being the whipping boys. It's just, I don't think they'll allow it to happen. So whether they pick up enough victories to stay in the division and get one of the other clubs down beside them to try and claw them into a bit of a relegation battle remains to be seen. But it's on the end of another heavy defeat. It's the leaking of points which is the worrying point for Biggar, because obviously away from home being able to score 29 is not a bad return, but it's the fact that they've almost conceded 50. So obviously find themselves at the foot of the table.
Let's have a look at that table then. National 1, Ayr at the top. Of course, their game was postponed last Saturday, so they stay on 33 points, but still at the top of the table with that 6-point lead. Glasgow Accies move into second now. They're on 27, above Highland in third, who obviously didn't play. 27 points there, but all 3 teams at the top there have played 7 matches. GHA in fourth on 23, Watsonians fifth, 19, Melrose 6th, with 18, Dundee 7th, 15, Gala 8th on 13, the same total as GHK in 9th, and Biggar at the bottom with 7. That's 3 try bonuses and 4 losing bonus points for them. This Saturday's games in National 1, Biggar do have a home game against GHA. That's 10th against 4th.
So Biggar, obviously at the foot of the table against a team in GHA who are starting to kind of claw their way up towards the top. It's going to be another difficult game, but I do feel that Biggar at home are still a difficult opponent. They've been on the end of heavy defeats at Hartree Mill so far this year, but they're desperate for a win. It's difficult to play against a team who's in desperation, and it might be one of those weekends, because a win does change the complexion of that league, but it depends who's getting it. If GHK can pick up a win, it's the gap between the team below them that's going to be the worrying thing. So, Biggar are desperate for a victory and be hoping to get one this weekend.
Gala versus Dundee. Dundee above Gala in the table, but the Maroons back at Netherdale. Director of Rugby at Gala is Ewan Swinton.
Our game at Glasgow Accies last week was really quite an interesting experience. The Accies are clearly in a project style of development. They have an excellent young team. Superb coaches. They have invested in that side of the team really well, and the team is playing with tremendous confidence. notable that they don't have any kind of crowd attending the game. It seems to be friends and relatives, so I think that there's maybe work to do there. But the outcome that they're achieving on the field is really good. They got the better of us on Saturday. I think it was a classic case of a team that was playing with a lot of confidence against one that was playing with not terribly much. The tries that Daki's scored included a couple of fairly harum-scarum kick-aheads where the bounce just worked for them and not for us. That just happens when you take risks. They scored one try which was length of the field and quite superb, and you just had to put your hands together and applaud it. So they're a good young side who are playing superbly well, and they deserve their win on Saturday. We had a couple of very notable, promising performances, excellent performances really, from Callum Pate, who tackled his heart out in the centre. He certainly was responsible for keeping the score at a reasonable level. And young Richie Mitchell scored two excellent tries, which kind of marked a coming of age for him in the first 15. He also put in a couple of superb saving tackles, which were greatly to his credit. He had a thoroughly good game. So we head into our next encounter, which is with Dundee on Saturday at home, in pretty good heart, really. Our forward play is definitely improving. Our lineouts are stronger. Our scrum is now solid, whereas it was looking a little weak at the start of the season. And our play in the loose is strong. Where we need to improve, I think, and it's been a common message, is in the confidence to run free in the way that we did last year. That will come. Dundee are a side who have been playing pretty well this season at times. They've got a couple of decent wins, and they will be a sturdy opponent for us on Saturday, but it should definitely be one where we're targeting a win and a 5-point win in truth. That has to be our aim on Saturday, and that will take us on to the second half of the season in much better heart. We are definitely on the right track. I think that it's there for all to see that things are improving and that the strength of the performances are growing. We just need a couple of breaks and for the confidence to rise and take control of that top 2 inches, and we will be absolutely fine this season. So we're looking forward to Saturday, and we're looking forward to a good outcome, a good crowd and a good well-filled bar afterwards to keep the club healthy.
Ewan Swinton, both teams desperate for points.
Yeah, both teams are looking to get some points on the board, and Gala, again, are just find that inconsistency, and they've got themselves towards the foot of the table as well, because they've been playing well. A good reaction from Watsonians, but again, just not being able to pick up enough wins. They've only got 2 wins so far this season, so, obviously in that conversation with the likes of GHK and Biggar at the foot of the table, so they'll be desperate for a win, because just up above them is Dundee, so they'll want to overhaul them.
GHK versus Ayr, that's 9th against first place. Here's Ayr's head coach, Grant Anderson.
Obviously, we didn't play on Saturday. Our game was postponed due to the weather up north, which was frustrating because we had a really good week of training, and we were looking forward to playing Highland. Again, another challenge, another test for us. It's always a wee bit flat when you've built yourself up for a game and then it gets cancelled. Don't get me wrong, I gave the boys the weekend off, chance to rest a few knocks or ease up on the bodies, and then we've come back in last night. Actually, we're at UWS, we're at the university campus, which the facilities are outstanding there, so the enthusiasm was really good for the session. Spoke through a lot of different things about where we are at this point in the season, where we wanted to be, and then moving forward where we want to be for our next block of games. Again, we set process targets and goals for each kind of block of 4 games that we play, and then we focus week to week on each game and what we're looking for. So numbers were really strong as well, so I've got a bit of a selection headache because more and more guys are coming back from injury. We were actually really quite thin on the ground at the start of the season, so I'm pleased with the wider group that guys have managed to come in and do a job. Again, we've got other guys returning, so there'll be a few changes from the starting lineup from last week, because we tend to pick a team suited to the opponents that we're playing. So we'll have a few personnel changes for Saturday, and then ultimately looking to go up to GHK and hopefully get the win. They will pose different challenges for us than what we'll maybe come across already. They play a kind of different style of rugby to many of the other teams in our league, but they've obviously got their strengths and they play to those. So we'll need to be aware of those, and we need to make sure that we're executing our game. Our focus really moving forward is to focus on ourselves, because we know that if we get our defensive system right, like we have done in a number of games this year, and if we get our attacking system right and functioning, and we're playing to our principles, then we feel that we're pretty confident going into most games that we can maybe achieve what we want to achieve. If we don't get those things right, then many of the teams in the league are competitive, and many have strengths of their own that they'll look to enforce onto us. So it's a bit of cat and mouse, but we put a lot of focus on the teams that we're playing. We do our homework, but then ultimately our most important focus, our number one priority, would be ourselves and doing what we want to do and doing things well, doing it with conviction and having really high standards. So that's what I'm looking to see from training on Thursday night, and again taking us into GHK on Saturday.
Grant Anderson, so no game for Ayr last week as their match against Highland was called off. That game will now take place on January the 6th, by the way. But can they go 8 from 8?
Yeah, I don't see why they can't. I think that, again, they're in really good form. Perhaps that week break, will really help them. And, it's obviously great to hear from Grant Anderson there as well, and give you a little bit of an overview as to where their squad's at, because, they look strong week on week. They just, the results that they're picking up, they're able to sweep teams aside, and especially when it's a little bit nipped tuck, they're still able to squeeze out that victory in an impressive fashion as well. So I don't see that there's going to be any change in the form for Ayr this weekend.
The game I'm looking forward to, Highland against Glasgow Accies, third against second, should be very, very interesting indeed. Accies have shown that they can happily play on 3G after putting 60 points on Melrose at the Green Yards, but will Highland stop them in their tracks, or can the Accies bandwagon roll on?
Big game for this whole division, you feel, because they're the best of the rest so far, and if Ayr again pick up that victory, one of these teams probably needs to try and pick up maximum points. And for me, you're looking at that going to Highland thinking that they want to try and get the victory but get maximum points, because if they don't, they then have to travel to Glasgow Accies, which is, at Old Annie's Land, is going to be a really difficult place to travel to. So, it's going to be a challenging weekend for both sides. It's going to be competitive. It's great to see two different names up there. At the top of that division, we've had the same teams for the last few years competing, which is great because it's been competitive. But they're two teams that have not been in the conversation consistently, because Highland have dropped off because of away form, and Glasgow Accies are newcomers to the division. So huge game between Highland and Glasgow Accies.
Melrose against Watsonians. Melrose in 6th at the moment, Watsonians 5th. Here's Melrose head coach Ian Chisholm.
A week off for rugby last week. Not entirely sure if it's going to help us or hinder us. But what it has done is it's allowed us to get players out the medical room and back into contention for selection. And look, I think this weekend means we'll probably be able to put out our strongest forward pack that we've had for a long time. We have had issues with consistency around our scrum and our line out set piece wise, and this week's been a really positive week so far. We had John Dalziel down last night just giving a bit of advice on our line out and our maul. And then naturally, the way John is, it turns out into him giving loads of great pointers around what we're doing in the contact, what we're doing around the field and how to design sessions. And I think that's been a real positive for us this season, where we've been really open to having guest coaches in and really open to have former players come in and give a bit of advice here and there. And the players love it as well. Like, you could see how captured they were when John Dalziel was there, and when he speaks they listen. And we're really hoping that the boys can take that forward into this weekend against Galloway on Friday night at Netherdale for the Storm, and then Watsonians at home. And moving on to the Watsonians game, I think our league position doesn't reflect how good a side we actually are. It probably shows how inconsistent we've been, but if you look at our performances, we've had really dominant and positive performances in patches, but then just trying to pull it together for a full 80 minutes has been a bit of an issue. And there's a number of reasons there, and probably a lot to do with that is inconsistency in selection, and how many boys we've had unavailable. And look, this weekend's no different. We've still got a lot of boys unavailable, and the common theme for this season has been it's been our back line and our front row that we've struggled to get any consistency there. And backs wise, we're still down a few key players, but we've got the likes of James Brown back in the fold. Oliver McKenzie, he'll start at fullback this weekend. We're still up in the air as to what we're going to do with our halfbacks just yet, and even if we just add another 20 minutes onto our performances every week, then we'll be able to get there. And there's other elements to this where if we have a real a real focus on attack for a couple of weeks, then our defence falls down. So we've kind of came to the understanding that we probably need to touch on a little bit of everything all the time. And look, the guys have really bought into that. Senior players have really bought into that. And what we are doing now is we're driving each other on in a way that means we're being much better planned, and the leaders are able to push out our messages when it comes to, you know, pre-game, post-game, and any time the players get together. And we've still got a long way to go in the season. We're excited for this weekend. We really want to get a reaction from the Glasgow Hawks game and look at, and I think we will. We want to show everybody that comes and supports Melrose that last 20 minutes against Glasgow Hawks was really out of character for us. And for people that come and watch Melrose, they never want to see their team give up. I don't believe that we did give up. I think that we were guilty of a lot of mental errors that just made things look easy and made it look like we gave up. So one game we chip away, we get a win. Next game we chip away, we get a win, and then before we know it, maybe other results go our way, and we find ourselves pushing into that top four again.
Ian Chisholm. Now, Melrose didn't play last week. Their game against Dundee was called off, but they're back at the Green Yards this Saturday and really need a big performance.
Yeah, they do, but, you know, it's difficult even so early on in the season, but they do need a big performance, but for what? Because I just think that, you know, in terms of looking for promotion, it's going to take a complete miracle to get out of this league now. It is almost a restructure, a rebuilding phase for Melrose now. Try and get a lot of experience into those younger players and start building towards next year. And again, that's so difficult to actually say about a Melrose team so early on in the season, but we're almost at the halfway point and they are so far behind Ayr. So, you know, there's going to realistically going to have to take a monumental shift in Ayr's form to make it competitive at the top of the division again, and then Melrose are reliant on the teams above them to slip up as well. So, you know, it's going to be an intriguing game. You know, both teams historically, you know, you'd probably read about Melrose Watsonians and the Scotsmen years and years ago, you know, as being one of the big games in Scottish club rugby, but this is where we are now, both teams mid-table in National 1, and they'll be wanting to try and get a good performance under their belt and build towards the future.
And certainly a confidence boost is required at the Green Yards. Well, let's move into National 2 now. Only 2 games last weekend. Stumel 10, Lasswade 31. And Peter Wright's team still on top. Convincing win at Inverleith for them.
Yeah, Lasswade again still looking really impressive. A good victory away from home, and it does steady that ship somewhat, you know, at the top of National 2 after suffering a defeat against the Gordonians. So it's still tight at the top of that division. Obviously Falkirk have got a chance as well as Peebles, and Gordonians in the mix, and Newton Stuart are coming up the inside lane as well. So really competitive in that division.
Stirling County 20, Falkirk 31. Falkirk putting up a real challenge in second place now.
Yeah, they are. I was actually driving up to Stirling to do a game on Friday night, phoned the wife, and she said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm just passing the Kelpies." She said, "Is that in Falkirk?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And she goes, "That's nowhere near Stirling." So I'm going to have to get a geography lesson because it's
it's 8 miles.
It's, yeah, thanks for that, M&M. Yeah, so, you know, we alluded to that last week, and Falkirk have been in good form. Stirling County have been, you know, slowly trying to, you know, steady the ship where they are as well, and just not feeling the positives from Super Series. So Falkirk again just being able to stay in the hunt because their form has been a little bit patchy as well, but they're steadied it there and keep touch at the top with Lasswade.
National 2 then, Lasswade in first place, 30 points. Falkirk in second, 26. Peebles in third, 22. Gordonians fourth, 21. Newton Stuart in fifth place on 18. Stirling County in sixth with 16. Kirkcaldy in seventh, 11 points. Berwick in eighth now with 8 points. Aberdeen Grammar ninth with 8 points. And Stumel at the bottom. Now there's a reason for that, because they've been docked 3 points. Remember a couple of weeks ago they couldn't fulfil the fixture at Stirling, I think it was, and they've been docked 3 points, the first national club to be docked, and they're on 7.
Yeah, and I think we spoke about that at the time. You know, obviously they couldn't field the front row, so they've been docked 3 points. I'm surprised my phone never went. You know, I was sitting here doing nothing. I could have been packing down in the front row for Stumel, but you know, it's obviously it's a shame to see, especially in National 2, that teams aren't able to get front row, but they are like gold dust now. You know, it's really difficult to find the personnel to get on the field, but especially in such a pivotal position like the front row, because safety is paramount. So yeah, Stumel obviously docked that 3 points and now foot the table.
Could be crucial at the end of the season.
Yeah, and it could be, but you know, the beauty about a league structure is it does really indicate the strengths and the weaknesses of squads. You think about I think about back to the time when I was playing, and some of the easier games that you had. We played Murrayfield Wands. There was a couple of teams as well that were just the whipping boys of that division, and they've fallen like stones. So they're now not in lower down national rugby, and it's because there's always a shift, there's always a change in terms of personnel that you've got. You might get a talented group coming through, or the other side of that is the fact that other teams might get stronger, might recruit better, might offer incentives. So it is a good indicator. So Stu Mel struggling for players, but it does signal the issues that are in relief.
This week's fixtures, and Aberdeen Grammar play Gordonians. Bit of a derby, I suppose. Grammar have a win under their belt now, which they achieved over Berwick a few weeks ago, but Gordonians hoping to push up that table.
Yeah, but the difficulty there is always the travel to Aberdeen. It's the old cliche of getting off the bus, and Gordonians are going to have to do it, but they have been in good form. They've got a lot of confidence from their victory against Last Wade as well, but Aberdeen might find a little bit of comfort not being on the bottom as well. Pressure might slightly be off, but you would start to favour Gordonians and an away win there.
Berwick versus Peebles, more derbies here. The only boarded derby, in fact, in Division 2. Graham Patterson is head coach of Peebles, but first let's catch up with Berwick forwards coach Paul Pringle.
Last Saturday we were due to play Kirkcaldy in an away fixture, which unfortunately fell foul of the weather. We were pretty ready for the game. We had a strong squad out. The good news is, though, a couple of guys who were probably carrying knocks have just had a little bit more time to let those heal up. Guys like Darren Goodfellow, who are really important players for us, just had an extra week of recovery. So there's benefits out of that as well, which we've taken. We had a hard night of training last night, getting the guys prepped. We've got pretty much a largely unchanged squad. So there's a few moves in there. We have Aidan Rosie's moving back on the wing, where I think we've all seen over the last couple of years he's probably one of the most dangerous players in our league. So I think it's good to get him back there where he's more comfortable and he can pick and choose his places to come into the game and have maximum effect. Ben Nicholson's back at centre, which is probably a slightly more comfortable position for Ben, and he'll do a great job there with Duncan Hardy. And we've got Jordan Jackson back in at 15. Jordan's a really kind of exciting runner, good footballer, good reader of the game. So we'll be welcoming Peebles this week. We know it'll be a tough match. The pitch is going to be probably fairly heavy. Peebles generally are strong up front. Really just making sure, the forwards are switched on to that. We practicing defensive structures, things like that. Just really getting that strong position. 1 to 8, we really need to up our work rate around the paddock. And these are the key things that we're looking to take forward into what we know absolutely will be a tough fixture on Saturday. Great to get a game back at home. It feels like it's been a good while now since we've had a home fixture. So just bring on Saturday. Boys are focused and looking forward to hopefully getting that first W on the board.
So obviously it's been a bit of a frustrating week last week with no game due to the weather conditions, the travel affected by the storm, which didn't allow Aberdeen to travel down to Peebles, which has given us a bit of kind of time to reflect again. But I must say that our players were primed and ready to go and really keen to get that game played. But unfortunately these things can't be helped, and we just have to reboot and look towards this week instead. Looking into the next sort of block of games, so we've now got a run of 7 before Christmas. This is really going to be the shaping of the season for, I think, a lot of clubs. This good run of games, hopefully we don't get the kind of weather affected again, and it will give us a bit of clarity on where we are come the Christmas break. And it's important for us to push that through and make sure that the players realise the importance of sustaining performances and availability, and both on and off the field. So the performance element on the field leads to results, which is what we're looking for. I'm always a believer of telling the players that if we worry about the performance, the result will take care of itself, and you usually get what you deserve from games. If your performance is really, really good, the vast majority of those games you will win. If your performance is poor, especially in this league where I think it is so competitive, then you won't get that result, and that's been reflected in the last couple of games that we've been playing. So hopefully our performance on Saturday will reflect how we've trained over the last couple of weeks, which has been pretty keen, pretty sharp, and pretty focused on what we need to do. The off-field side of things, injuries and managing availability always comes into that as well. We've got a number of players coming back from injuries, but that injury list grows as well, as I'm sure it does with every other club as well. But that's something we've just got to manage as a coaching group, and players themselves have got to manage that, and our medical team trying their hardest to get everybody back fit and on the playing field. Now Berwick, if we look ahead to them, they've not had a great run of results, but we've got to be wary of these wounded animals, and they could turn around and bite us, and that's why we're not sort of taking their position in the league at the moment as something that we can take lightly. We've got to assume that they could potentially push on up, and they're taking a bit of time to click, and they may well turn their season around, and that's what we're looking to do, is make sure that we are focused on what our areas should be in getting the grip with this game. Berwick have maybe suffered a wee bit initially from they lost 3 key players, I would say, end of last season, in the Thompson brothers and Rory Heinhoch going back up to Musselburgh, and they'll be striving to get better and get these guys that have replaced those players up to speed, and it's just maybe taking a wee bit more time than they would have hoped, but I'm sure they will come good, and that's what we're looking to do, make sure that we're not the ones to suffer from that. Our squad will be pretty similar, settled to what it was selected for last week's game against Aberdeen. There's nothing really changed there performance-wise. The only one would be that, unfortunately, Ross Wolfenden, who was due to make his kind of first senior game for Peebles, having moved up from the Colts, he played for the Colts against Hawick Youth on Saturday and picked up a wee shoulder knock due to the senior game being off. So he's just unavailable this week. Hopefully it's just a short-term thing, and he'll return fairly quickly and get his debut in senior rugby. As a result, Donald Anderson will come back into standoff and add that experience and settled nature that he brings to that position, and Jack Harrison will retain the scrum half position, which will give us I think a very experienced and balanced half-back pairing to control and get that element of control around about the linkage between forward play, set piece and phase play and our backs, and get those firing again. And that's what we're looking to do, is apply that pressure around those set piece battles. We've been pretty good at retaining ball, but have we been efficient in terms of getting that return for all the effort that's put in there? And that's something that we've worked on over these last couple of weeks at training. The pack will be pretty similar because it does perform well. There's certain areas that we've looked at in terms of improving that area, looking to mix things up a wee bit round about our front row options. So there'll be a bit of squad rotation there, probably involving a couple of our more experienced guys like Neil Hogarth and Willie Aitken coming on board and giving some boys some more game time with the Reds this week to aid in their development as well as young players. So quite similar, I would say. 90% of that team will be same as selected as was for last week's cancelled game against Aberdeen Grammar. But looking forward to the challenge. It's always a bitterly contested game down at Scremerston, usually due to that biting wind that comes across the pitch, but hopefully the weather conditions are pretty good. We can see some good rugby on display. We're looking to exploit what we see as the weaknesses in their side, and I'm pretty sure they're looking to do the same to us. But I'm hoping that our weaknesses are a lot less than theirs, and will prevail at the end of the Saturday afternoon.
Graham Patterson. Before that, it was Paul Pringle, forwards coach of Berwick. Now, this could be quite a tense encounter. Plenty at stake for both.
Yeah, I think this will be a difficult game. You look at it and you think Peebles are in good form, towards the top of that division, but it was almost the same last year and they went down to Scremerston and it was a really tight game. I think Peebles won a game they probably didn't deserve to, which can tend to happen in border derbies, but that can happen, in these games, so Peebles will go into it well drilled. The thing I do like about Peebles at the moment is I really enjoyed listening to Graham Patterson last week, speak about the squad in terms of, it was a complete shift to what I was used to when I was at Peebles, is they want to create a pathway for players and then develop them, nurture them and push them on. Likes of Ross Wolfenden that they're trying to bring into the first team squad, they've got a real clear plan in terms of trying to work with the academies and stuff to make sure that Peebles are putting on a good platform for these young individuals. But it's a testing one again away to Berwick. Scremerston, as we know, is a difficult place for all teams to travel. They've got good good home form, and they've been putting up good performances at Scremerston. So they're desperate for a win as well. They don't want to be stuck at the foot of the table. So it's going to be a really interesting border derby at the weekend.
And we'll have a camera at that game as well, so look out for highlights on Borders Rugby TV on Sunday. It'll also be one of our featured matches on Rugby Radio on Saturday from 2:30. More on that later. But Kirkcaldy will play Falkirk, 7th against 2nd in National 2. Falkirk will be focused on this one as they aim for National 1 Rugby next season.
Yeah, I think, it's all the teams that are in that top 4 conversation, actually the top 5 conversation, all there's no clashes. They're not playing each other. They're all playing teams at the bottom, which is an interesting make-up of that. This weekend's fixtures. So if somebody slips up, another team's going to take advantage, and that's one of those games away from home. You look at it, Gordonians, Peebles and Falkirk, all away from home, so they'll need to try and pick up points, and it's a difficult one at Beveridge Park as well. Kirkcaldy, although they've not been in great form so far, they're always really strong up front, and Quinton Saft as well has them well drilled in terms of in the backs. So they'll be building and looking at this game as a chance to try and get some consistency.
Last week against Stirling County, Stirling head coach is Craig Deacons.
So playing Falkirk on Saturday, it was billed to be a bit of a local derby game. We knew who was coming over to Stirling County. We knew their players. They've got a lot of experienced, well sort of aged players. They've been around for a couple of seasons collectively as a team. They've been through the highs and the lows, and they've been managing to build in their squad every year. So we knew it was going to be a tough game, especially from the start of the game. They hit us pretty strong. There wasn't really much in it, to be honest, to start off with, and then it was really a couple of really good, well finished tries from Falkirk that kind of gave them their tails up, especially in the first half. It was more so in the backs. They have got a lot of good players in there, especially the two Fold boys. They were just a bit more clinical than us. However, we were still in the hunt the whole time, because at half time it was only 10 points to 19 for Falkirk. So it was only 9 points at half time, so it was quite a close affair. And then going into the second half, we made a few changes. We managed to pick up a couple of scores as well. And to be fair, a wee bit of momentum kind of shifted towards us. And it was just a bit frustrating. 5 minutes to go, it was 24 points to 20 up for Falkirk. We had a chance to capitalise on and put them under some pressure, and we forced it a wee bit, and Falkirk managed to regather the ball in the halfway line pretty much, ran in from the halfway to get the final score of the game, which resulted in being 31-20. So it was a bit of a bitter blow for us at the end there, because there was an opportunity for us to close that game out and actually maybe sneak the win, however it wasn't to be. But the big thing I'm saying to the players at the moment, as long as we're learning from this, because we're a young squad of boys, they've got to learn from these experiences. They've got to build. We've got to go again this weekend. We're playing Last Wade this weekend, and it's going to be a carbon copy of pretty much Falkirk. They're sitting top of the table Last Wade. They're a well experienced, well drilled team. Peter Wright's there, so you know exactly what to expect from them this weekend. So this weekend we're going down there. We are confident going in, because we have been playing some really good rugby. Squad selection for this weekend against Last Wade. There shouldn't be too many changes from the team that played last weekend against Falkirk. There was nothing really. There was no injuries or nothing of any issues of that from some of the players, which is really good, because it's it's been one of our sort of kind of dog legs at the moment as regards to we've been picking up a lot of injuries. I think in the weekend there, that's us now. We've used 40 players to over a 7-week period, which is a bit bonkers, to be honest. There'll be some teams that'll be looking at that going, how's that even possible? But we are using a lot of these young boys at the club, and they're certainly taking their chances. Especially guys like Mickey Keston last week got his debut against Falkirk, 17-year-old prop, come through the youth system, and it was really good. He's a player that played really well, took his chance, and he'll probably retain his position for this weekend. And there is a few other guys that are in the twos at the moment that have just come up from under 18s, and they're playing really well. So a few of these guys might be also getting a chance this weekend. So it's really exciting at Stirling County now, because we're now getting to that sort of situation that we're getting all the guys back from injury. We're actually having proper headaches with selection and stuff. So it's players have really got to step up to the mark. If they're not playing well, there's people in the second 15, the guys that come back from injury and stuff. So there's a lot of competition up for grabs now. So we're certainly going down this weekend to Last Wade. Really excited what we can actually go out and deliver, especially against them. They're top of the table. They're the guys that have actually got a target in their back. They're top of the table. They want to try and retain that as much as possible. So we're certainly going there to hopefully do a job and upset the score.
Craig Deacons now. Last Wade's only defeat came at home. So can Stirling do what Gordonians did?
There's every chance that they can. I think that last Wade, early on in that season, actually, we're looking at Falkirk thinking they were going to be the team to beat, and I was not swaying from that, even though, my old side was in there. I thought Falkirk were going to be the team to try and knock off the perch at the top. But last Wade have had really good form. They have been defeated, obviously, by Gordonians so far, but Stirling are a team that have kind of flat to deceive so far. They've not really been able to find the consistency in their squad. They've had fixtures cancelled and rearranged, and frustration is kind of set in at Bridgehaw. So you do wonder what kind of frame of mind they're going into this game in. But Peter Wright again will have last Wade well drilled and know that it's going to be an attritional battle, and I'm sure it's one that they'll be looking to win.
Newton Stuart versus Stuart's Melville. Stuart's Melville head coach Alex Haggart.
Yeah, we were really disappointed against last Wade. They're a really good team. They are strong up front. They've got some really good backs, like properly good backs. So I think they'll be tough to beat this year, to be honest. In terms of us, we just shot ourselves in the foot. I think we're a bit off them, being brutally honest right now. But I think we didn't really help ourselves. I think when we're playing these games, we probably need to be at 7, 8 out of 10 for most of our guys. We weren't. We were a bit short of that for a number of us, which just ultimately meant that we got a bit of a C and 2, to be brutally honest. But moving on to Newton Stuart this week, should be a really good test. We've had some great games with them in the past. They're an awesome club. We love going down there. They're so hospitable. They're really, really, really great people, and they're super welcoming. And they're really, really thankful for anyone who does go down and play. So we're looking forward to meeting up with them again and seeing some of the old faces that we've played against before. Very much looking forward to the roast dinner that we get after the game. But we're also looking forward to trying to put a few things right. We've worked quite hard this week on our defence. Dave Hampton, our defence coach, has done a power of work in terms of identifying the key areas where we need to be a bit better, and trying to improve those with the boys. And then we've done a bit of work on our set piece attack as well. So if we can go out there on Saturday and we can improve those two things, then I think we'll be pretty delighted.
Alex Haggart, and of course dropping from 8th to 10th is a big blow for them. First National League team to be docked points this season. What about the match though? Because Newton Stuart beginning to find some form.
Yeah, they're hitting a bit of form. Obviously got that win against Peebles when Peebles travelled down a couple of weeks ago, and Stuart's Melville, with that sucker punch of getting 3 points docked, are desperate for any sort of points. So, it's going to be a really difficult game to travel west and play Newton Stuart. But, I think, again, you're looking at that and thinking it's a home victory, and it's a victory that Newton Stuart will need to try and keep touch at the top as well.
National 3 results then. All the scheduled games were played. That's Boroughmuir 22, Hillhead Jordan Hill 32, Howe 5 69, Cartha Queen's Park 5, Preston Lodge 71, Hamilton 19, and West of Scotland 38, Dumfries 20. Some big scores there, and really surprised with the Preston Lodge one. I mean, obviously they're now top of the table, but Hamilton have been pretty competitive, and that's a bit of a thumping.
Yeah, they've been competitive, but they've not won. So, I think we were talking about it last week in terms of the way that the confidence is starting to kind of exude out of that club at Preston Lodge, and you felt that they had a big score in them somewhere, and it's just unfortunate for Hamilton that they've been on the end of a hammering, and Preston Lodge have really put them to the... So that's a huge scoreline there in that division, but it allows Preston Lodge to return to the top and again just to continue that confidence that they're feeling at the moment.
Hillhead Jordan Hill winning at Boroughmuir at Meggetland, very important to get that win and cement their place in the top half. And we saw Howe Fife there, a big 69-5 win against Cartha Queen's Park, and again showing that big gulf between top half and bottom half in that particular division. And a good win for West of Scotland, of course. I mean, they will certainly be quite happy with that. Let's have a look at the league table. Preston Lodge go top because Allan Glens and Orkney play in the new year, that fixture. So Preston Lodge took advantage. 31 points for them. Allan Glens in second, 29. Orkney in third, 27. Don't forget, Allan Glens and Orkney are the only two unbeaten teams in that league. Howe 5 fourth, 23. Hillhead Jordan Hill fifth, 23, and then that gap to Boroughmuir in 6th on 17, Dumfries 7th on 12, West of Scotland 8th, 11 points, Hamilton 9th with 8, and Cartha Queen's Park down at the bottom with just 7 points. Now this week it's Allan Glens against Preston Lodge. It's game of the day, I think. Second v first.
Yeah, definitely is, and especially after that weekend off for Allan Glen, you just wonder what kind of form will they be in. Will they kind of rue that missed opportunity to get a bit of rugby in the legs of their players, or will they have taken it as a bit of a rest week and look to really go into this PL game pretty fresh? So obviously Preston Lodger at the top, and it gives them a chance to build a little bit of cushion against their rivals. But as we've said before, in all the games that we cover, home form is going to be crucial in these battles at the top, and it's Allan Glen's who've got that advantage. So a really, really intriguing game in National 3.
Cartha Queen's Park versus West of Scotland, 10th versus 8th there. Dumfries against Orkney, 7th against 3rd. Orkney still unbeaten, as we mentioned. Another very long trip for them. Hamilton in 9th will play Boroughmuir in 6th, and Howe Fife against Hillhead Jordan Hill. That's an attractive fixture. 4th against 5th, both on 23 points.
Yeah, a lot of big fixtures there. Obviously Orkney want to try and keep touch at the top, but I don't think a trip to Dumfries is an easy one, even though they're towards the foot of the table. So a lot of interesting battles at the top, and obviously the likes of Hamilton and West of Scotland at the bottom as well will really be looking to try and pick up some victories and try and get a bit of a cushion and some points tallies and stave away relegation from National 3.
Well, finally on to National 4. Garnock 48, Murrayfield Wanderers 28. That's 6 out of 6, 100% record for Garnock, the only team to get the try bonuses as well as the wins. Stuart 27, North Berwick 10 was the only other game played in National 4 because of the postponements, and that one went to form, which means the league table, Garnock looking good if they can keep up the pace. They've got 30 points at the top. Whitecraigston second on 24, Strathmore third with 22, Dunfermline 4th with 20, Stuartry 5th with 17 points, Murrayfield Wanderers also have 17, they're in 6th, North Berwick 7th with 14 points, and then the 3 9s at the bottom, Perthshire in 8th, Greenock Wanderers 9th and Ross High 10th, all on 9 points. And this week's fixtures has Garnock against Perthshire, 1st against 8th there, Greenock against Dunfermline, North Berwick versus Murrayfield, Stuartry against Whitecraigs, and Strathmore versus Ross High. So a couple of competitive ones in there. You would think Garnock will get their 7th win on paper. North Berwick against Murrayfield will be tight, 7th v 6th, and Stuartry against Whitecraigs 5th against 2nd.
Yeah, I think you look at that, especially the Whitecraigs Stuartry game. Obviously going away from home, Whitecraigs are needing to keep touch with Garnock at the top, who you would imagine are favourites going into that game against Perthshire, because Perthshire joint bottom, if you will, in the table. You can imagine that Garnock are going to pick up another victory. It might be a bonus point victory, so Whitecraigs have got a tricky trip to Stuartry. So they've got to pick up some points there to make sure that they keep touch at the top, because there's a 6-point gap between them just now, so they can ill afford to slip up any more.
Well, time has beaten us again. That's it for today on the Scottish Club Rugby podcast. Hopefully we'll get a full programme of fixtures this week, although it's likely to stay, let's say, damp across the country. Don't forget Rugby Radio on Saturday. That's coming to you live from Scremerston, keeping tabs on Berwick against Peebles in National 2. We'll also be covering Kelso versus Jedforest. There'll be TV highlights of both those games on Borders Rugby TV, and do check out the website rugbyradio.co.uk for all the information you need on the 50 clubs playing National Club Rugby in Scotland. If you want to get in touch, it's podcast@bordersrugby.net. But from Dale Clancy and myself, bye for now.